Share video link. Oh, disregard. I want to just share my screen. Oh, that's the wrong share. This share button. Now, can I just share the meeting?
Meeting minutes.
But like I have our video here, so why can't I share that screen?
Window.
Yeah, but will it, if I click this, oh, is it this one?
Yeah. Yep. That's it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Also share tab audio, yes. I should turn this around.
I'll work on it.
Make it go to the
We
pull up the
you
YouTube.
didn't bring our mission statements back here.
No, I forgot them.
Do you have that? Can you pull that up? Where would I find that in our?
Should be maybe in my folder. Why don't I have video? That's the next question.
Yeah, that's when they break down.
Yeah.
On the night, we just,
Oh, I do have video.
we had 2 people call today.
I don't have.
Somebody else here today. And one called back.
Can we scroll back a little bit?
Sorry, James.
I can't see set. It's cutting them off a little bit, but I don't know if it's hugely important.
Better?
Yeah. Okay, now the ultimate test is there's proper sound.
We're almost ready, folks. Sorry.
Yeah.
It could be a.
How is there still? How is there still? I'm muted. He says your mic is up. Oh, but
Yes. Your microphone.
Okay.
Okay, James, can you hear me?
Okay, yep, I got you.
So I can just turn him up.
Okay, yep, I got you.
And
It's a 9-minute delay.
All right, Shauna's my technical person tonight, so I will talk first, okay? I like her to come up and visit with you, but. Okay. So what we have on the agenda tonight, we wanted to certainly give you guys, start giving you all ample time to have discussions about any and everything that you've already learned, experienced, and bring in your own opinions and comments about this project. But before we do that, I think that it's always a good idea to review the mission statement that you all set and then the goals that you all set. So bear with me, I'll read these. The mission statement. The Odessa Police Facility Focus Group will recommend options that align with public values, support the operational requirements of our police department, address both present and future community needs, and ensure the responsible use of taxpayer dollars. And the 4 goals that you all set for yourself. Goal 1. The facility will be located in an area that ensures accessibility for all residents and supports optimal response times. Goal 2, the facility will serve the needs of the community. Goal 3, the facility will meet past and future growth needs, ensuring it serves generations to come and allows for potential expansion. Goal 4, the focus group will provide recommendations that prioritize fiscal responsibility. Again, I think that it's important that we just remind ourselves of those as we go through this process. Tonight, we want to start with introduction of some guests that we brought to share their experiences. The city of Odessa utilizes Midwest Public Risk as our insurance provider. They provide the city's liability, workman's comp, and health. Okay, there you go. See, so I brought in Jason McMahon and Gary Chance. I'll let them share with you a little bit about themselves. But tonight, what they're going to touch on really focuses on the risk management portion of of a facility. How it currently is working within. Okay, that's just batteries. Sorry. How it currently works with our operations, and then how a facility could change how risk management views the city of Odessa and the police department. They're probably going to bring in some ideas on technology integration, data protection, workers' compensation, lobbying, and officer well-being will be discussed a little bit. Liability and legal concerns. and then of course, facility and operational risk management. So, to step away, I'm gonna turn it over to Jason McMahon first, and I'll let him introduce himself and Darren Chance. I'll leave that.
All right, I got one.
Okay, very good.
Ready to do this or?
I'll try this one.
You're good.
There'll be lots of them.
Is that good? Can you hear me? I can hear you better. That's all right.
Go for it.
Good evening. I am, as the Chief said, I'm Jason McMahon. I'm the Risk Management Director in Midwest Public Risk. I've been here for about 18 years, I guess. Prior to that, my prior life, I was a Public Works Director for another one of our members, the City of Raytown. Spent 10 years working for the City of Lee Summit Public Works. So that's kind of my background. And Darren talked about, he's law enforcement, so I thought it'd be good to kind of bring him here tonight as well. As Chief said, we're actually a risk pool. We're not an insurance company.
Sorry.
That's all right. For units of local government. So, instead of buying insurance, you pool with 100 and some odd other local jurisdictions, cities, counties, school districts, things like that. And so when I read about this focus group in the Odessa, I live down on 2nd Street. I reached out to the chief and said, we've got a lot of members that have gone through things like this, like Green Valley just built their police department. They're one of our members. The City of Gladstone just added to there. So we've kind of had some members, we've got some experience kind of working with some of our members in situations like this. So I said, anything that we can do to help, just reach out. And of course he did. So we're here tonight. Hopefully you guys have some questions we can answer. We do have a few things that we can kind of talk about that we, as an organization and what we've seen from our members has been important for their agencies and when they've done things like this. If that makes sense. Want to go ahead and.
Yeah. I'm Darren Chance, retired police chief, spent about 24 years in law enforcement, and have been here about 8 months, so I'm very, very new to this side of it, but I have a lot of experience on the law enforcement side. Unfortunately, before I worked at NPR, when I was in law enforcement, I was a member rep and a member of NPR as well. So I have a little bit of experience being on this end of it, but I'm here tonight just to kind of give some insight from where I have originated, because I worked in the police department when I was a first-time chief in a building that was very similar to what we have here. And so I have a little bit of expertise. I'd like to share that with you if you have any questions. That's why we're here.
I just go sort of off the agenda that we've got here. Some of the facility and occupational, risk management is, it is having a facility that's kind of designed for law enforcement. And there is a difference between, a building that has been set up as one versus one that is set up for, to protect the officers, protect the public, people that might, be in the facility and somebody else that would come in and have some sort of interaction, being able to separate people, securely separate one, from one another is kind of a big deal. And to be able to, separate officers from people that aren't officers that might be, in the building. And we've kind of seen some of those things in the past where there have been assaults that have taken place, in a police station, for lack of a better, because there's no way to secure somebody in some of them. We run into that. But then there's also some legal rules about how you can, how long you can handcuff somebody if you're going to put them on a bench. And, there are some practices that are frowned upon, in today's day and age versus how it was done 25 or 30 years ago. So making sure that you're maintaining, what you're supposed to from a legal aspect in the state and the federal level. It's one of those that no matter how good you do things, and I think that the staff, I've worked with them for a long time now, I think they do fine work. They do really exceptional, some of the things that we work with them on. In fact, they're an example to some of our other members. But no matter how good you do that, you have something bad that happens, and then, the outsiders start looking at every aspect that you got. They want to see where you're housing, where you're training, where you're doing everything. And so it kind of comes back to, well, are they really up to the today's standard of 2025, or are they living in the 1870s sort of thing? So as you're moving forward, this is probably important to look at how you are dealing with those things. And that kind of gets into that legal and the liability. I mean, they start looking at how they make you look bad based on things versus how good you've done something, unfortunately. We've got the workers' compensation and officer well-being. Some of our members are fortunate enough that they have community centers that have workout facilities, like the city of Dalton's got a great, for the citizens. And so they offer to their police department free membership so that they can go there and work out. But if you have, if you're looking at some sort of a small space to just put treadmills or things like that you can put in that so they can get some of that, cardiovascular, they can do a little bit of working out. From a work comp standpoint, we find that people that are healthier get hurt less, for one, and typically if they do get hurt, if they're in better shape, then they heal faster, or if they have that opportunity to come back and do that. So when you're looking for things, that's always a good idea. We get that a lot is, well, what if somebody gets hurt while they're working out? Well, that has happened. I mean, it does happen occasionally. Hopefully, we try to find people into not doing, box jumps, and we're not trying to be, world-class weightlifters. We're just trying to keep fit. We're trying to do some cardiovascular, some movement, to keep everything loose, and limber so that we're not getting hurt while we're doing things. And hopefully, there might be space to do something like that. In a pretty small space, you can get a lot of, stuff put in there. And we've got lots of members that have, stuff like that. We can also get that for you if you wanted pictures of it or tour anywhere. Obviously, the chief's got contacts, but we can do anything like that. From technology, one of the biggest things that we run into a lot is retainage of data, of things, and it's not always the day after. It's not always the week after. It's, we get an attorney that says, I want everything that you've done for this sort of thing. And then all of a sudden you've got to, scour, your emails and everything else you got electronic and save that information somewhere. And having, we lost power and something happened and the hard drive failed is not an excuse in the end. So making sure that you've got the quality components for the backups, probably on-site, off-site, and things like that is vitally important. Over the years, unfortunately, we've had a lot of lawsuits that when you don't have that information that you were asked, and it's not really an ask, it's a you shall when an attorney sends that information that we need you to preserve, these things. That's a real problem when we can't make that available because of for whatever reason. We didn't have enough storage or we had a failure somewhere. And we had a building that flooded one time and they lost all their stuff. There's like, you should have done better. Basically is what the judges said to our members. So, dealing with that sort of thing is really vital. And then making sure on some of the, the officer well-being is having a, dedicated training space is important. I mean, we provide a lot of training for the officers. They can get their post-credit hours through a lot of the training that we do. But there is, needing space to do that and for interviews and things like that. Those are other areas.
Killing my list.
Oh, well, you just stepped in. I know.
I was just gonna say.
I've done a lot of this.
You're covering it eloquently.
No, that's right. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Why don't you step
I'm
up?
just gonna add a couple of things really quickly. He covered most of it. Yeah, very, very good to have him around. But some of the other things you mentioned, the interview room. An interview room is something that's really gonna help if you have a victim or if you have a suspect. Having an interview room to go to gets them away from everybody else. It's quiet. You can have video in there. That way it can be recorded, which is going to help with your cases. When I worked for a small agency, we had a tripod and we had a camera set up. It was really rudimentary. But when to a bigger agency, then we were able to put it in there to where we had the cameras built in, and it was so much more operable, so to speak. And those are the things you take to court with you. You have to have good technology to be able to make cases. That's a really important thing. And also, too, if you take someone into a room, you got a victim, you don't want to interview a victim out there in the middle of the police department if you don't have that space, because then the officers have to leave and they can't do their work, and it can be problematic on that end. So interview room is huge. Also, too, evidence. This is one thing. I know I talked to Chief. My evidence room is very similar to the one that you have, very, very small. Evidence is another thing that's crucial to a case. And you've got to have a proper area to store evidence. And there are a lot of rules that go along with that. And if you don't follow those rules in the chain of custody, you end up losing your cases there. It's really frustrating if you're a victim and somewhere along the line, the case gets kind of off course and you don't get a conviction. And so that's something you got to keep in mind too. And I know we were talking and the officers are processing evidence in the same places that they eat. And that's not a very good thing to have, because if you have fingerprint dust and you're trying to eat your sub sandwich, that's just not healthy. And it's a morale thing. I mean, to give officers an area where they can eat and they can break bread and communicate with each other that's separate from where you have to do the work. And honestly, you should have an area just for processing. And then, of course, with the chain of custody, we're having a detective, you need to make sure that that's only available to that person, because you don't want multiple people handling the evidence. So there's a lot of intricacies that go into a police facility. And what ends up happening is you end up making better cases. The officers are going to be higher morale-wise. And some of the things that just jump out at me, let me look here and see, because I know you covered most of it. But one of the other things that's huge is community engagement. And so that's when you're planning a police department, you need to make sure that you figure out a way that you can bring the community in. And one of the best ways to do that, if you have a training room, as he mentioned, that gives the officers a chance to have us bring the simulator out that does use of force, which is an amazing thing. We provide that to you as a member, but also it gives opportunities for a Citizens Police Academy. And you want to talk about, I've been fortunate enough to be in a couple different places that have one, and to have community members come in. I mean, you could have it here or you could have it somewhere else, but it doesn't have the same feel as if you have it inside the police department. Because this is their police department too. It's not just for the PD, or it's not just for the community, it's everything. And it's something that I think would be beneficial to you. Maybe even start a volunteer program or whatever, but you want it to be safe and secure, but you also want it to be open. Because ultimately, the police department works for you. Now, let me see if there's anything else I can think of here. I'm gonna leave this with Chief. I did a few pages of just things that I was thinking about today. And one of the other things we talked about morale, having a place where the officers, you can do like awards and recognition, that's a big thing. Also, if you were to have, I don't know if you guys have an emergency operations center.
It's at the police, it's a little sliver of the
Okay.
police department.
So when you're designing a police department, years ago, when I started my first job at the University of Missouri in Columbia, we built a new police department. And within that training room, we added the infrastructure to it to where multiple computers can be hooked in and phone lines. And you can make that a emergency operations center that would work for everybody in the region. And that's something to think about as well. That's a really, really beneficial thing to have. And then you mentioned the workout facilities. I've conducted surveys. I know other people have conducted surveys with officers where I work to say, hey, what would you like? And that is almost always one of the things that gets mentioned in those surveys is an area to work out. And that's something that's really important. If you can give them just a little bit of time each shift. And also too, a lot of times officers will go work out in public places, but sometimes it's nice to have a place to exercise where you don't have to be bothered. Because when you're an officer and you go out, within 10 minutes, someone's gonna ask you a question. Gonna say, hey, and then you have a hard time doing what you need to do. Some of the other things, we talked about the interview room and stuff, but Sally Port, it's always good to have an area where the officer pulls in, that if someone were to get loose or something were to happen, they're contained. And same thing inside the building. Right now, they're processing people inside the building. That's unsafe for the officers and for them, because if they were to have something happen in there, they could damage equipment, damage computers. But if you have a dedicated space to do the processing, and that's where you uncuff them and do the processing, then they're contained in there as well. And so it's more controlled. So just something to think about. And I think that's about it that I have. But the biggest thing I will tell you, liability-wise, legal, is training. Failure to supervise and failure to train are two of the biggest things. And the best way to set your supervisors up for success is to have training. We do that at NPR, and we plan on doing that consistently. But also, it's nice to do it at the agency level as well. And the more training you get, they're required 24 hours a year. Well, that's not nearly enough. You don't ever want to do the minimum. You want to go above and beyond that to show that Odessa and Odessa PD take training seriously. And the more training they get, the better off they are going to be when they come to do their jobs. And so that's something to think about. Liability is huge on those things. And failure to train is something, if something were to happen and they come in to dig, and they will dig, they will go through training records, they'll go through everything. having the proper training is gonna be a major risk mitigator, but also having a facility that's got all of its ducks in a row is gonna really go a long way.
You know, one of the other things that I know we kind of had talked about and something that we, I guess, deal with, the one coverage you didn't actually talk about is property. So we
There you
do
go, yeah.
property that's kind of coupled with the liability. And so I don't know if you guys are looking at, you know, facilities that are already built to rehab to a police station, or, you know, if it's just the ground that you already have, you know, it's kind of starting from scratch. I can't say it's 100% guaranteed, but what we find most of the time is a rehabilitation costs more than new, which somewhat seems counterintuitive because there's already a skeleton there or a shell there. And we see this a lot when we have expansions and remodels of especially sort of specialized facilities like fire stations and police stations, because they're just different than an office building. They have to be built differently. They house different things. They need to be more secure. And so we do property appraisals for our members. We did Odessa this year, in fact. And we'll get a property appraisal back to a member, and they're like, wait a minute, you're telling me, you know, this building is worth $8 million. We just spent $6 million to add on, you know, double the size. And you're telling me, you know, it's only $2 million more than that. And when you start going through it, it's like, it just costs so much more to add or to build or to rehab when you've got to keep the structural strength of what is there versus building new. So it's not always that it's going to be that case, but a lot of times when we get the feedback after we do an appraisal for somebody that somebody's just rehabilitated or added on to a building, that, well, this number can't be right. And then when we go back to them, we'll say, well, we're giving you the appraisal for if there was nothing here. If you built it from the ground up and what it is, this is what it would cost. You didn't do that. You built with something that was already there, and it just tends to cost more to try to integrate those types of things. So again, I don't just saying that so that you kind of have that information as well, because we do run into that, you know, a lot with members that have added on to things or rehabilitated things. And that's kind of what I had on my notes that you had asked us to have information. Certainly want to take any and all questions you guys got. And I'm happy to come back anytime for one of these meetings. So, but yeah.
This isn't really regarding your subject, but you mentioned you were in Public Works at Raytown.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with their sales tax advisory group or their sales tax oversight group?
Not other than, I think they have one, but I
Why they established it, the operations of it, reasoning behind it?
Sure. I know, I mean, I stopped working there in 2001, so I'm a little out of the loop with their operation, but I know some people there. I could certainly try to ask them.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Odessa pays in premiums to you guys.
Contributions.
Contributions.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, I started that. He corrected me real quick.
It's fine.
so, let's say that we know of issues at the police station, like that the booking station is right next to Jenny, and then that guy gets loose and punches her in the face, right?
Okay.
Okay, so, you're handling the work comp.
Right.
And let's say, like, in any other lawsuits, what happens to our contributions? Is there a point where you're like, this place just can't contribute enough to our organization? You're too much of a liability.
That's a great question. Workers' compensation is pretty much has complete oversight by the state of Missouri. So, I mean, you have your mod rate, if you're not familiar with that. So, a standard, your expected losses versus the people that work for you, and this is in any industry basically, you have a mod rate which starts at 1. You know, that is what your expected losses for your employers is. if you have more losses than what are expected, then it gets calculated every year and it would go higher than one. So if you were spending, $10,000 because that's what your expected is, and now your mod is 1.1, you would spend, $11,000. So it's kind of calculated that way. As far as the pool to say we don't want you anymore, knock on wood, we've not dealt with that. I mean, it's sort of, being part of the pool it's kind of all for one for all. You guys might have a bad year when Oak Grove or Grand Valley have a good year and they help cover that. They might have a bad year when you have a good year and you help cover theirs. So it all kind of works together. If we start seeing losses, then I'm gonna be calling and saying, hey, I see we're having these losses, what can we do to try to fix this? So that's where we step in to try to help mitigate those things if we see a problem.
So you would try to intervene.
Try to intervene, see how we can help. I mean, we're always a resource. That's what we're, here for tonight too, is how can we try to help you guys? There's nothing worse than going to a brand new building that somebody's built and walk in and go, well, why did you do this and create this hazard? If we get in on the front end, the farmers commercials where the guy that says, we saw that, covered it, that's the world that we live in. So when we see these things that other members have or have had problems with, we try to share that with the rest of the pool so that we don't have that somewhere else. Yes, sir.
So I'm aware of pooled groups, insurance groups on the business side, where if someone has a tremendous loss, the insurance group goes after other members to cough up the money to cover that loss. If someone has a tremendous multi-million-dollar loss, do you have co-insurance to cover that? Is it possible that you would come to the city of Odessa to come up with that money to cover that remaining loss that your co-insurance is unable to cover? How is it?
I understand the question. Municipal government is a lot different than a standard business. We got sovereign immunity in place for 95% probably of what you all do from a liability standpoint. And so I think our coverage for each of the members is kind of geared that way. We do have reinsurance from a liability standpoint. We also have reinsurance. Our property program is about $5 billion that we cover. I think for any single incident, our reinsurance will pay, I think it's around $300 million, which is any particular point of our membership. If you drop the Joplin tornado, we don't have any place that we would have a loss bigger than that. And so that's where we kind of have it at.
So we're protected against some maximum out of pocket.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
To the point of a building, do you guys work with any building designers or architects for law enforcement?
I'd say we don't, as in us. We do have our Law Enforcement Liability Advisory Committee next Wednesday. We could certainly ask the participants at that meeting who has used somebody and get you that list. We could probably get it sooner than that, but that's a good place to ask. And so we could certainly get the designers, architects, those that have done work for our members.
I think that would be something as this focus group looks at, is we need to start looking towards something like that. Who are we going to deal with? What possibilities? Who can we work with to kind of proceed going further in that? So if there's any chance you could get a list of that to the chief for our next meeting?
And we've got a number of law enforcement. I would assume that Lauber, who's your attorney, they work with a lot and probably done a lot of contracts with a lot of people that have done these too. We've got a pretty good relationship with them, so they might have a good idea through those contracts who would be good as well. But yeah, we can
And
definitely.
Tom, one thing I'll just say is when we went through the bidding process 2+ years ago, there were a number of architects that submitted proposals. So I have a list that I'll compare with what NPR is able to provide me, and we can provide you with a generous list of architects in the Kansas City area, all of which have some sort of public safety background, maybe a fire department or a safe room for a school or something like that. But they've all put in proposals in the past, and that'll be on top of the one that already came and talked to you. We can get that to you, sure.
Yeah, and Chief, one thing we may do too, are you a member of the MPCA? Was it Police Chiefs Association?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, no, and you can send them an email and they'll shoot it out.
Yeah, we've got a list from them
Okay.
too, but it's an
Just making sure.
outdated list, but.
Thanks. And if you think of it later, write it down, get a hold of us, we'd be happy to answer it. You don't have to ask tonight, we're not going anywhere.
No, appreciate that. Thank you. Again, if you have additional questions for NPR or any of the guests that came and talked to you, let me know. I can reach out to them, make sure that your question gets to them and that they get an answer back to you. We can do that. Any other questions for our guests tonight? I will plug them one little time here. So in March 3rd to the 7th, they had mentioned how they assist us with training. We're going to utilize it's a Milo system. It's a firearms simulation system at City Hall, in the basement of City Hall. You all can come to that. I will certainly get those dates out to you again, but you can actually participate in what my police officers participate in. And we set that up in the basement of City Hall. So if you're interested, we'll tell you those dates again. You're more than welcome to come. I'll put you through what my firearms instructors put my staff through. Elected officials have gone through that. City staff has gone through that. And I want to give that an opportunity for you also. Okay. And thanks to NPR for providing that, that state-of-the-art equipment.
Thank you for being.
Thank you. Thank you for our time.
Very good. All right. Okay. Sean, you want to just move on?
Yeah.
Okay. Next on the list is really just group discussion and feedback amongst yourselves. We did have a guest with Navigate scheduled, but due to some scheduling conflicts, we're going to push them out. And we thought that might be a good idea to give you guys an opportunity, an hour or whatever you guys need, to just have discussions amongst yourself. Everything that, and all the learning that you've heard thus far is on the table. You guys can discuss that through. Shauna might have additional thoughts on that. And of course, James Cranbill, the chair, is on the laptop, so we're going to turn him up so he can get involved in your all's discussion. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna talk a little bit about
Okay.
the 3 phases.
Yep, if you want.
Okay, so we've mentioned before kind of our thought process behind the different discussion topics, if you will. So we have discussed this with James about having kind of 3 phases of discussion. One being exploratory, where we talk about, all the kind of information you guys have kind of brought in so far, and taking that information and making the determination on, what kind of programming should be included. Should we include the shelter? Should we include municipal court? Should we include emergency operations and officer wellness and things like that? So that's kind of what we're considering as the exploratory phase. And then we wanted, obviously, you guys all to talk about location, because that really goes hand in hand with that. So we thought exploratory, then location. But the more we thought a little bit, we were like, well, truthfully, you can't decide if you're going to have a storm shelter until you know the location, and they kind of go hand in hand in the same conversation. So those are the 2 topics that we felt like would be a good start today. And to simplify things, we have a meeting later in the calendar that would be dedicated for the financial component of it. So once we determine the needs and where we're going to be at, then we can start going down that financial discussion. The other thing we wanted to talk with you guys tonight about, or notify you guys of tonight, or have you all kind of discussed. So is the community needs and prioritization. So I know there's a lot of things happening in Odessa when it comes to asks of our taxpayers. So we're not asking you all to, determine what's most important or what has to go first. But I think that hearing from you guys and having that discussion amongst yourselves of the things that are going to impact your mission and your mission statement, I think would be valuable. So I just wanted to run through some of those things that are kind of on the horizon that are important or potentially impactful to the mission of this focus group. So one of the things at our, it was two board meetings ago, we had City of Higginsville City Administrator and their police chief come and discuss the 911 sales tax with our board. So I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with that, but on the April election, in April 2025, there's going to be a 1/2-cent 911 sales tax. I always want to throw public safety in there.
You said just sales tax.
So that will be for a 1/2 cent and it will be countywide for all Lafayette County voters. And that's to go towards the 911 dispatch center that's currently operated out of Higginsville. So that's a for sure something on the April ballot that will kind of play into the voting environment. We also, I don't believe they've been finalized yet, or have they? The fire department is looking to seek additional bonds, is my understanding.
Correct.
Is it final or not?
I haven't seen the language. It would have to come out at the end of the month, but I haven't seen it.
Yes, so all the April election ballot language has to be finalized by the end of January. So we should know for sure soon, but either way, if the conversations are being had now and they're not on the April election, that just means that they're likely to come up on a future election.
Yes. Okay, one question.
Oh, go ahead.
Will Odessa continue to utilize Higginsville's 911?
I'm just gonna let you.
Good question.
Yeah.
Yes, so by state statute, Higginsville is the public safety answering point called PSAP. Right now it's currently funded, sorry, I'm telling you Higginsville information. Lafayette County funds that through $1 per device fee. So if you look at your cell phone bills or any phone bill, anything that you call 911, there's $1 per device charge on there. If the voters vote past this question, that fee goes away and it is replaced with a county-wide 1/2 cent sales tax. That should fully fund the 911 dispatch center. Right now, every entity, including the city of Odessa, puts in additional funds from our general revenue to fund that, because that $1 subscriber fee does not compensate all of the dispatch operating fees. But then potentially, there would be probably about $25,000 a year savings to the general revenue fund that we put in on top of the subscriber fees that come from public.
And so all jurisdictions pay into it separately. So the fire department, they pay into that separately as of right now. We do,
Higginsville even pays in their own share into it, like in Concordia.
per department, so. not
So your
per
question about
jurisdiction.
will we continue to use Higginsville? Yes, but that would be a whole new board would be created. They would make a decision with Higginsville as far as whether they build and operate their own 911 center or they continue to contract. My goal would be to not disrupt 911 operations for anyone in the county. So whatever they choose to do, our primary focus would be no disruption to 911 services to any of our residents in this county.
So we're aware of the potential for fire general obligation bonds. I'm sure you guys have heard the discussions that the school board is having as well about replacing or renovating Macquarie Elementary. So that is potential to be on April or a later ballot. We also have use tax. So This is not something that the Board of Aldermen has chose to pursue at this time.
I'm sorry, also have what tax?
Use tax.
Okay.
Use tax. So the board has not made a decision to put that on a ballot or anything yet, but it is a tax that is out there for the city of Odessa to potentially collect or allocate for whatever the Board of Aldermen dedicates it to, or it would be a general tax. So how the use tax works is it's a sales tax on online taxes. So our tax rate today is 8.475. 4.2 of that is the state, 1.75 of that is the county, and 2.5% of that is the city of Odessa. So when a city of Odessa resident today purchases something online, say from Amazon, I like to use the chicken coop analogy. So whenever we had the chicken ordinance going through, Nerds Hardware started selling chicken coops. So if a resident chose to purchase that exact chicken coop online from Amazon, they would pay a lesser tax rate. They would only pay the 4.2 and the 1.75 and then 0 for City of Odessa. So City of Odessa doesn't collect 2.5 of the 8.475 of sales tax on online purchases. But if you were to purchase that chicken coop at Nerds, you would pay the total 8.475. So this is just, when we put the use tax on the ballot, you're basically opting in to collect that extra 2.5. So it's not an additional tax, it doesn't raise the sales tax rate, but it's just not being collected today, and our residents are not paying the 2.5 on online purchases. So that's something that is likely going to be pursued in the next cycle, if you will. We did go for use tax in 2018. That was on the ballot at the same time as the 2018 transportation tax. And so both of those measures failed in 2018. So we're discussing it again. And then lastly, the other thing that I want you guys all to be very much so aware of, but I can't tell you what the solution is at this time, but it is our reservoir. So we have been aware that the spillway itself is in need of repair. It is not in need of immediate repair, and we do not have a funding source. So it's one of those things that we've been aware of, and we've been working with our engineers over the past year plus. Our engineers have been conducting a hydrogeological study to better understand the needs of the spillway and the dam. So we're starting to get those results back from our engineers. But as of recent, there's been an application from a developer directly across the street, across from Double O, from the reservoir, who's wanting to put in 9 lots. And the way our dam hazard level works with the state, with DNR, is we are currently in a hazard class that allows us to have up to 10 facilities or habitable facilities within what they call the inundation zone. So the inundation zone is if the dam were to break, this is the path that the water would take and how long it would take to get there. We're allowed to have 10 facilities inside of that inundation zone and stay in our current class. But with that, we already have, I believe, 4 or 5. So with that subdivision, that puts us at liberty of having to go up to the next hazard level. And in order to accommodate DNR's requirements for that hazard level, we would likely need to raise the height of the dam or lower the water level of the reservoir. So both of those things, spillway renovations and dam renovations, will cost us significant amounts of money. We don't have exact costs or cost estimates from our engineers at this time. I don't even want to put a number to it, but we estimate it to generally be around $5 million, but it could be more. So just want you guys to know that liability is there and that need is there for the city again, we have not had these discussions with even the Board of Aldermen yet, primarily because of we just don't have the answers back from our engineers. So our engineers have been working and conducting the hydro study to try to figure out what kind of options we have. Do we need to raise the spillway or raise the dam? Do we need to lower the water level? Do we need to add another spillway or widen the current spillway? We have a lot of different options and our engineers are looking at what the best option would be for us. Either way, those options will cost money, so, and we have looked into different, grant options, and unfortunately, there are not many, if any, grant options, so.
Is the state still involved with the reservoir as far as
Um,
decision making and things like that?
No, we have like a management agreement with them, with Department of Conservation, so that just is like, how will the fish be maintained in the property and making sure that the dam is mowed and free of trees and things like that. And they were the ones that were responsible for building the dock out there, but there's no oversight because it's not technically a water source. So we don't get our water from the reservoir anymore. So the only oversight that we have for the dam as a whole or for the reservoir as a whole is that dam and spillway, and we have to comply with DNR standards. So those are the things, not to ask you to solve all of our problems, but I do think it's important for you to know those problems and think about and discuss how those could potentially impact your mission, so. Any questions about those?
None of that was good news.
And no, not particular. So, I'm gonna go ahead and sit and leave the rest of the meeting to you all. If you have questions for us, feel free to ask them, but I do think it's important for you guys to, be able to discuss amongst yourselves.
Thank you.
Do you want me to ask, do I do something, James?
Does he need to talk?
James, do you want me to unmute you?
You have to unmute you first.
Oh, I have to unmute me, sorry. There we go. Can you hear me, James? So then I need to turn on my volume, or is there too much feedback?
Actually, mute yourself and then turn on your phone so we can hear him.
I think it's muted.
While we're waiting on James, what do we as a group think about location? Do you want to first thoughts of anything? I don't think there's any buildings available in Odessa that we could rehab and just like the first part of the talk. And what they had just mentioned, the risk management group, if there was something available that we could rehab, I think we would just, spend too much financing. For a newer building, even if it was a few $1 million more, would be a building that we wouldn't have to do remodels again or infrastructure on the buildings, plumbing, electrical upgrades and breaker boxes, stuff like that. So personally, I don't see any buildings in Odessa that we could use. What do you guys think about that?
I think if we have land available or that we should build on it first, if it allows for what we need, other than purchasing land, but we may have to look at purchasing land as well.
I just remember what the Sedalia police chief told us that they built that downtown because of political reasons and how they don't like it downtown because they have no space to expand and everything else and all the issues that they had with trying to put up the gates and people parking. And so I think the proposed location, I don't think would work for us in the long term. So I think we would need to find a different location just to kind of make sure that like we can expand in the future if needed or whatnot, because we're pretty landlocked right there.
I didn't get to go to Sedalia, so I was gonna actually ask
James, I'm
if you
trying to
guys.
get you going here.
like learn anything new or have any input that would help those of us that didn't get to go might have missed.
I mean, Sedalia's a beautiful facility, I won't lie. But they did build it right downtown. It's right next to their city hall.
Yeah, it's like adjacent to the city hall block.
So like they have an external storage building. It's 2 stories. But like they can't expand, they can't really do anything. They had some issues. They were gonna put gates around and people were parking in like officer parking. They don't have a lot of officer parking or staff parking there because of that.
Yeah, there's not a lot of security in there. They're outside their facility, so like anybody can just walk over their vehicles and wouldn't have a whole lot of access. They don't have sally port or anything like that, so I mean, any time that they're taking somebody out, it's just in the open parking lot. So that was one of the things that their current issue was talking about was he wished that they had a little bit better security with gates, but then again, you're waiting on a gate to open and shut and stuff like that. So he was talking a little bit about that also. But their facility was very, very nice. I do think that there's some design aspects to it that was a little, you talked about. So like, one of their things that they were talking about was whoever their commanding officer is, his office is actually upstairs and he doesn't ever use it because he's downstairs with everybody else, you know, mingling and being with them. So there's definitely some design aspects of that we look at also.
They had a lot of issues with their entrance too, because they had like 2 windows. They have their records and they have this other one. And so nobody really knew where to go, so they stopped kind of using the second one.
Yep.
And if you look at the front of the building, like in the records, like their windows are up high. For me, that's a security thing, but then kind of with the other security issues, you go to their break room, which anybody can access those windows because there's no protection. Like somebody could just come to those windows, break those windows, and assault the officers.
Yeah, they were saying that they're in their entrance, like everything in there is bulletproof or resistant for the most part. And then you can walk around into unsecured parking lot and just a regular old window into their break room, like you can just see officers. So that was one of the things he's like, I wish somebody would have thought about that before they just set it up.
If there was anything else major about that building. There was houses like on the other side.
Like right next to it.
Yeah, like there was houses right there, and I was like, well, that'd be kind of, yeah, there's like plenty of places for somebody to hide if they were to escape. And, you know, like, you know.
They didn't keep anybody there anyway, as far as that.
Yeah, they sent them all to your county anyways.
But I have to say that if we had land in, I would rather see a new building rather than renovate. Also, the location that we have there by the post office, I think is sufficient. That's it's a block long and it's deep enough that you can get all kinds of stuff there, I believe anyway, as opposed to going to spending more money to purchase more land. I mean, I think you're asking for even more opposition.
Well, I know, to your point, that talking about parking and stuff, I know that they talked about if we didn't do the community center part of it or the court side of it, that they could utilize that area for expansion of parking if they can also have more internal parking lot. That was something that we
That location, as you said, is plenty of room to expand. You can design something, build something, you can get the voters to approve. And then later, at whatever point that may be, we can expand and add on whatever's needed.
I agree with that location too, personally.
Okay.
Sorry, Bruce, what did you say? I missed it.
I'm sorry,
What did you say? I
but
missed it.
that location is big enough, we can design something, build something that we can get the voters to approve. And then later on, as the need arises, we can build what we need to build at that time. Whether it's an additional shelter or additional room 10 years down the road for more room for the police station
Right.
or some other facility.
Well, we're-
But I think the key is everyone here anyway, I think acknowledges that we need a police station. And I think we need to try to get rid of the things that are holding the station hostage with the voters.
When you say we can add on to it later on, where,
Well, let's say that we build it on the west
the
side,
old football field right there, that's where we're, it takes up that whole spot, that's what it's gonna be.
not a single station. If we just build the
If you're
station.
saying if
We
we
don't
cut,
have to
if we cut this,
Right. If we
Okay.
just build what's
I
needed
understand.
for the police station and say we
then there would be room.
build it on the west, towards the west side, we have towards the east side to expand.
Solely allocated for police department.
So if this was cut down some to whatever, then there would be some space.
And I don't know what the size would be. Let's say chief needs 10 years down the road, say it's 4,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet. Build what we need in 10 years, what we think we need. And in 10 years, if we don't need it, great. If we do need it.
No, I understand what you're saying. I was looking at what was there.
The previous.
It's planned to take up the whole block. Right there. But if we didn't use all that, there would be some room for growth later on. Makes sense. I mean, I kind of agree with the idea that that's the location. I think that previously has been looked at. It seems like the obvious location. I know there's old timers that it's like you can't put a police station on our football field. And we're talking about old timers, but unfortunately old timers vote.
They probably said you couldn't put a police station in the cafeteria either, but
Yeah,
we have it in the cafeteria right now.
true, but that didn't cost them
I
anything.
can't really hear what he's saying, Josh.
When you guys do discuss, since our microphone is over here, James is just having a hard time hearing you. If you guys just speak up just a little louder, that way he can hear, and then I've got him to try and pump through if he has any comments. We had some technical difficulties tonight we're trying to overcome, so sorry about that.
Chief, what was the square footage of just the police station in the plans for the entire thing?
Off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I'll probably butcher that, and I don't have the paperwork in a second here. So, we had brought this down to 12, and I think, or right at 12, I think it was around 9,000 square feet
9,000.
for just the police department side. That included the Sally Port, area, that did not include the parking lot or any of the drive space. So the facility itself,
Did you say 9 or 12?
about 9.
Nine.
Yeah.
And that was for 20-year?
That was 20-year growth, yes.
Hey, Josh.
Yes.
So when they're saying just police station, what are they talking about there? Are they taking off the court side of it, the public meeting rooms end of it?
Yes, James, that's the discussion, is whether the courts or community safe room side of it is a necessary program within the department. That's the discussion right now.
So can I add something to that?
Sure.
So just something to think about on that front is, let's say we have to have the rural major case squad called out for a major crime in Odessa, or even something on the outskirts of Odessa. It's really pretty important to have a space big enough to allow that group to come together and be able to kind of discern their investigation within one room that's secured and not accessible to anybody else. So that could be done with that, what's labeled as a court, but it really could be a large public meeting room, kind of like the training room that we saw in Sedalia. So I would hate to cut something like that out, because it really does serve a huge purpose. And I did not want to do the storm shelter aspect of it, which is fine. But we really need to think about still having a space large enough to meet those needs, for something happening in the future. And it's really not a matter of, oh, this will never happen here. It's actually a matter of when it'll happen.
Well, I can agree. This is Bruce James. I can agree with the training room, similar to what we saw in Sedalia. My issue with the shelter, is I don't think that at this point anyway, it's fiscally responsible to spend 1.6 million for shelter for 331 people when we've not yet researched the possibility of a grant to build a much larger facility for many more people. So, I think that needs to be looked at further before spending that for the shelter attached to the building. It may be that later we do that, but, I can't see spending 1.6 million without seeing if we can couple that with 4.8 million in a grant.
So Bruce, I really don't disagree with you on that from the storm shelter aspect. I think we still need some of that square footage. If you recall, when we had the designer in, he said really to make that room, the existing design anyway, to meet storm shelter capabilities, it would add about $200,000 to it. So, and I don't disagree. I'm not sure we really need that aspect. But the meeting space itself, I think is good, like what they have there in Sedona.
So if we have a police station of 9,000 square feet for 20 years, if we looked at a 5,000 square foot police station for 10 years, would that be sufficient? Could that include your training room, Chief?
We're having technical difficulties here. So to answer that question, pull out 4,000 square feet from a facility. The one we're in right now is right at 1,200 square feet. If that, is that about 1,200 square feet. Obviously my goal would not be to compromise some of those key features that I've shared with you, evidence control. Those are some very important officer safety, detention or processing of inmates. Those are very important officer safety issues. If it can be accomplished with 5,000 square feet, I think that's a question that you guys all discuss.
Well, I don't think we're qualified really to tell you what you need yet.
Well, what was designed is what we need. But you guys had mentioned talking to the public and how the public will perceive that. So that's your old discussion. The $12,000, the 12,000 square foot facility, we've already got the needs assessment. That's what we need. But if we have to, that's for your old discussion, really to take the cost down is to remove square footage. Then you guys need to help us find a mechanism to do that. And if that mechanism is to remove programming, how can we accomplish that? And that's really what we want to have your all discussion about. After knowing all what you know and what you think the public will understand, because we're going to ask you guys to help us.
So I guess what I'm asking is I'd like to know the space you would need for half of the staff with the same features that you want, the interview room, things like that. But assume half of the population that you projected for 20 years, for a 10,000 population and not 20,000.
So my take is, I don't see us being able to do 5,000 square feet. I think Chief Thompson is right, to meet needs from where we're at now and even in the future, we're looking at that 9,000 to 12,000 square foot.
But that's a
for,
20,
for many reasons. I don't think if you try to shoehorn us into 5,000 square feet, you're gonna have people currently even still on top of each other. If we're gonna meet safety standards with Sally Port to the proper, interview rooms and things like that, along with evidence.
well, keep in mind, that's a 20-year projection based on 3.2% annual growth, which we've not come close to, and no community in the area has come close to for 20 years.
I think,
So here's what I will add to that and something to think about is I was here in the 1990s when we went from a town of 3,000 to almost 5,000 with the addition of the outlet mall. Here's our wild card that we've got to think about right now. When I-70 expands to 3 lanes coming all the way out to Odessa, I really kind of foresee an influx of Jackson County residents wanting to escape that Jackson County property tax and come out to Lafayette County, just like we did in the 90s. You know, you look at, let's say 1992, Johnson Drive didn't go all the way through to not Conner, but Phillips. When we saw that tremendous growth with that southeast side of town, our town exploded. And I really kind of foresee that happening again once we get the highway expansion going.
one thing that I know we had a conversation with James during the process, and I think that it kind of alludes to what you're thinking. So James's calculations aren't necessarily that this population equals this amount of employees or this amount of square footage. What I think we're at a disadvantage for is because we're a small organization, we still need a lot of just checkbox programming. So it's not just like we need X square foot because we have X amount of population, X amount of employees. We need a bare minimum square footage just in the programming to make sure that we have proper evidence, to make sure that we have interview rooms, to make sure that we have the right amount of bathrooms and things like that, for just the bare bones necessities that a police department needs. We still have to have that, even though we're not Grain Valley, or we're not the size of Grain Valley. So I think even if you took, I don't know this for a fact, and we'd really have to have James do that, which we'd probably have to engage in some type of another agreement with him to get the information. But to, even if you scaled back his population estimates to 10,000, and I don't know exactly what the number was, but at 20,000, that was an extra 5 employees or whatever it was. At 10,000, okay, that's an extra 3 employees, but you still need all the same programming with 3 more employees or 5 more employees.
What was our cost per square foot?
And that's a great question that you point out. You know, the cost per square foot for the storm shelter side was higher than the cost per square foot for the facility. Now, we did discuss other building materials, which brings that square foot price down. And those are certainly discussions that could be had. You know, we looked at a concrete steel structure, one that we felt would be here 100 years from now. But if that is too costly, for the community, other building material types are available, wood and stucco.
Wasn't it $300?
So I don't have the data. It's all in your binders. I apologize, I don't know the page. But the square footage is also in there. It breaks those down. It breaks down the cost per square foot.
So if those numbers are right, if it's 9,000 square foot, $300, that's 2.7 million.
So I think the cost was closer to 400.
Well, and some of that
It
cost
was
in there.
$395 a square foot.
400, so 3.6 million.
For construction only.
Yeah, construction only, not the technology that goes into it. Obviously, to engineer a facility costs money, so that's built into it. When you added all those costs together, that is how, it went from a 3.5 or 4 million construction cost to a 6 million total all-in cost. There's contingency fees, and it's all broke down in that technology costs money, running the internet cables, heating and cooling costs money, all of that costs additional funds. And those are built into those estimates, obviously. So as far as, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say, essentially, to build the shell of the building wasn't horrible when you look at the big picture of it. Like Josh was saying, it was around 3.5 million. But to outfit the building with the technology and all the other incidental stuff that goes into it is where the other 3.5 million or 3 million was coming into play. So I think sometimes that bigger number is getting lost, and people are thinking just to build the building is that much. And it is, but really the construction cost for the building itself is about half of what that overall number is.
So each one of you in that binder, if you remember, there is, so Marlon Dyer has it open, it's kind of an over schematic, right? So the best way, it's something that document, the best way to eliminate costs in a facility is to remove square footage. An exercise could be by the group to go through that, and you could go room by room if you want, and you can cross off that's how you eliminate square footage. You know, is there a way to do that? We did attempt that in-house. There is a part of that document, I don't remember if it's on the back side of that page, but you'll see some blacked out areas. No, try it, I think I saw it over here. But there's one that's got shaded area on it. That was our attempt to remove square footage. So the facility that Marlon is looking at, that's the 8.4, okay? It was reduced to the 6.
So back up then, chief, if you could tell us what staff you would not need at a 10,000 size community, then we can cross off rooms for that staff and reduce square footage.
We'd have to look in the facility needs study and see if we could get to how police facility design group got to the 20 equals that staff. Because it's based off, and there's calculations in there based off of population and needs and things like that, that would maybe help us get to that.
Obviously, the goal is public safety, right? Our goal and our mission is to serve and protect the public here in Odessa. And, you know, my position is a very difficult question to answer. How can I do that if you're taking spots away from me to do that? But I see your position, how do we reduce costs, right? I think that's really, you're all, you know, you as the public, you guys, how do you want public safety to look like in your community? I know how it wants to look like in 10, 20 years. And to say, well, we won't need a detective. And, you know, 20 years people scrutinize Chief Thompson because he said we didn't need a detective. That is very difficult for me in my position because ultimately my goal is to provide public safety. I do that with the crew that I have now. I do that in the facility that I have now. Can we do it safer and better? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we do a great job now. Can we do it better? We can. Certainly, it's a difficult question, Bruce. I will think about that response, and maybe in a future meeting, I will have a better answer for you.
We all want it to pass.
No, I understand. I totally see where you're coming from. Give me a little time to digest that, think about it, and you and I can have a conversation again about that. Thank you. I promise.
One of the other things, and I think James he started to touch on it a little bit, but if we eliminate the entire storm shelter side, is there a need are we eliminating the square footage on that side, or are we eliminating the hardened shell? I think would be a question that I would have for you all. because one of the main things that we did was we made that a multi-use space. So there's quite a few programming items that will be eliminated with the elimination of that side of the building. And there's also a lot of things that the police department intended to use the space for as well, like the emergency operations center, training space, and I believe their break room was also included on that side. So one thing to consider is if it's like for like to just cut off that side of the building, or would there need to be accommodations on the police side of the building to not completely remove that programming.
And I just want to go back to the location. I think we're really hung up on that we already own it, but I need to remind everyone that like we do have a map of land that's owned by the city. And I have a feeling that like the reason why it didn't pass is because people didn't like the location. And I think it was the cost of location. People get really hung up with, not hung up, but we're tradition. We like puddle jumpers down there. And if you put a building there, so we have to think outside of this group, but we also have to think about what our community wants.
My thought is, I think the biggest stumbling block was the amount of money. I think that was the biggest thing, and it was gonna take 40 years to pay it off. But that's a lot of money in anybody's book. I think that was the biggest stumbling block, is the amount of money. They didn't look at it as half-cent sales tax. They looked at it as the full price. That's what I think, that most people did not like the fact that it was that much money.
I think you also, like, I don't know if you were on Facebook, but people were not happy with the location. I mean, and so I think it's gonna be an overall thing, like, we really have to think about, if there's another feasible location for it, I don't think we shouldn't just throw our hands up and say, oh, we've already got this land, let's just put it here, but I definitely think we should explore other locations.
If we have other property that is acceptable, I would say so.
Well, I mean, we have,
About that lot is big enough that I don't know, I drive by it every day on my way home and I just don't see it. Like, why?
It's very small.
Building where you're gonna put the parking lot, you're gonna make everybody cross the street, like, and if you just want to continue to grow it, where's it gonna grow?
Well, visitors to the place would park on the street, which you're looking at, I don't know how many parking spaces that is, but it's quite a few. But how many people are visiting the police station at any one time, other than a municipal court situation if it was there?
Well, I think that does make sense, but it's still just, I don't know, you just don't see it, it's just, cause you want, like, you're gonna have you want the salary board, which I agree with, that's very, that's an extra safety precaution that I definitely agree with, it, and where are the guys gonna park? Like, where is that gonna go? I don't know, I just don't see it, maybe.
James, did you have something?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the current empty fill that we're looking at, or that you guys have proposed for a new construction build, that's about the largest empty piece of parcel that the city owns in town, correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
Inside,
so,
like town, yeah.
Sorry, James, in the central location of town.
yeah, so from a construction standpoint, if we're building new, that makes sense for that because it's the largest piece of ground that we have. But as you look around at other commercial properties in Odessa, there's just not a lot of options out there. Even the old Morgan's one on the market today, but as you look at the size of that property, it's very small and it's really kind of landlocked. And we also run into the potential of running into something with the I-70 expansion. I don't know how that's going to encroach on that property as well. We just don't, it kind of stinks, but we don't have a ton of options out there, even if we were going to buy a building and remodel it. anybody had a chance to kind of look around town to see what's available?
I don't think there's anything available, James.
Not really.
Yeah, it's tough. So, I mean, the only thing out there that's even remotely adequate is the Odessa Medical Group building on 40 Highway. But I think they're smoking crack with the price tag that they have on it.
You should arrest them.
What price do they have on that, James?
It's 1.275, I think. The advantage to it is it's 11,000 square feet on both floors, and it's got some empty land behind it. But I'm just not sure by the time you get into it and remodel it, like the insurance guys were saying earlier, it may still be cheaper just to build from scratch from the ground up.
Okay.
Should we vote on the location to knock that one off the list?
I don't think we need to vote on anything right now.
I think that.
I think we're a little ways away from that. I think we just need to have open discussion and see what our options are out there. I like the idea of looking at that current plan that we have and looking at all the different stuff they have in it and seeing, is there anything that we need to cut from a space standpoint, or if we're in agreement that what it's designed as far as rooms and uses and all that, if we agree with that, then we can move forward from there as well.
Chief, what's your current records keeping? Is it at the station or is it
So,
is it the city?
it's in that warehouse next door.
Okay.
Yeah, the hard record files, and then of course, some of that technology we've tried to incorporate, so we do have in-house servers and we do back those up as best we can.
By the way, you probably have to keep paper records for a certain number of
Some
years.
forever.
Yeah.
Some forever, yeah, and we have records that go back, decades, that we're required to hold, and those are only in paper format. Obviously there's discussion with moving those paper formats over to digitize them. But I don't have the current staff capacity to do that yet. That would be a goal. That would be a future goal, would be to digitize those records.
Josh, it's kind of the same thing too with property and evidence. There's some things that you just kind of hold on to forever.
Well, yes, anyone that, went on that was able to go to the tour with Sedalia, there's evidence that I currently have that we would keep forever, just like there's evidence they shared with you that they would keep forever. Of course, there's some evidence that gets destroyed as the process moves along, but I didn't open up that evidence room when you came and did the tour, but had I done that, it would have been an overstuffed closet that just kind of fell out on top of you when you open up the door. That's the current use of the facility.
Yeah. Sadly, we see that way too much.
So do you guys agree that it'd be helpful to look at the different programming inside the current design?
Sorry, that was.
But one other question, while I'm still, before I forget again, because I've already forgot like 5 times tonight. And I apologize if I missed you guys discuss this. Do we still feel that there's a need to go over to the sheriff's department and tour that? Or even try to schedule a tour of Oak Grove PD?
So that was gonna be one of my questions at the end of tonight, was to kind of get your feedback on any additional tours. Certainly, I haven't set a schedule. I didn't forget about the Oak Grove option. I just haven't worked that out. The sheriff's department is certainly willing to have the group do the tour up at their facility. So that would be for a future set date, and we would work with you guys if you want to do that. For those that went to the Sedalia tour, that might be, plus our own tour here at Odessa, and your own research, maybe that was adequate, but we're here to help set those up if you want. And I think that was, if you didn't hear, that's James' question is, do you want me to reset that up with the sheriff's office? Or would you rather me just focus all of that and see if we can get the Oak Grove worked out? Or a different location if you want to go to a different community nearby.
My preference would be Oak Grove, and
Okay.
as opposed to both of those or the sheriff's. I would rather go to Oak Grove myself.
I'm kind of curious, if we go somewhere else, what are we gonna learn that we don't already know? We went to Sedalia, which is bigger than we are. I mean, but I thought that showed us, what you need right here is in there, to some degree. And I think we went almost anywhere, we come away with the same, I've written down, some things about as far as what do we know right now? And what we know, the first thing I put was our current facility is not adequate. Okay, and we see the things that would make it function at a higher level and more where they need it to be. I think we know that, and we don't know it from the way you know it because you do it. We take a lot of, it's about what you tell us and what we heard from the people at Sedalia. If we went over there, Aaron and I would show us the same thing. I think we hear a lot of the same thing. Now, the size of the facility, maybe. One question I have, and I think you probably know, Josh, I just don't want to, what does Higginsville do? I'm working in Higginsville now, so I drive by there all the time. They look like they're just kind of stuck in a little hole. I don't say hole, but I mean, not a very big place. What is their facility like?
So they're not much larger than us as far as their facility is.
They've been there quite a while.
It's about 20. No, they relocated to their facility that they're in now in 2018.
Okay.
When they took over 911 operations.
So is that where that's headquarters, in that location?
Correct. There is a basement to that facility, so I know you've driven by it. It looks like it's one level, but there is a basement. With the basement included, they're sitting at about 4,000 square feet. It's about 2,000 on the first level and about 2,000 in the basement. But they also operate the 911 center out of.
And it doesn't really matter.
At least a quarter of that upper.
But that was just something I think about every time I go by there. I just wonder, because it's more than what you've got, no doubt.
Sure.
But they're working with less than they probably wish they had. They probably wish they had a little more.
The feedback is that they want to separate that dispatch from PD building wise in order.
No doubt they don't have some of the things that we have right here that we would have if we had the new facility.
That's correct.
They would like to have some of the things that you need to have, and anybody would. It's what those guys came to the risk management people told us. I mean, we've heard that same thing about what is it? Evidence storage and officer well-being, and those are. I believe those are all important things. But I don't know that going to for me going to another facility probably isn't going to make that much difference. Because I think I believe what you're telling us. So that's what I put it that way. My eyes have showed me that what we have is not there. Other places have it, and it could look a little different where you're at. And this would look different if we build.
Does anyone disagree with that, or think we do need to go see another location? If not, we'll.
Somebody else. I didn't mean to say nobody needs to. I'm just
No.
My eyes have seen. But somebody else, and some of the people didn't get to see Sedalia, so they might like to go see something too, and it might be beneficial. So I'm not saying that it's not worthwhile.
Thoughts?
And I would probably go, but
I think it was nice to see Sedalia, but it was quite a jump from what I believe that we need. They're a way bigger town. And so I would have preferred to see Oak Grove, something similar or size-wise. That's why I wouldn't mind seeing it.
My take is Oak Grove or Green Valley.
Green Valley's in a whole other category.
Yeah, that's.
They're bigger than, are they larger than Savannah?
So Green Valley's right at 16,000 population. But as far as the facility is concerned, square footage, it's gonna be very similar to the civilian square footage.
So here's my proposal for tonight. Is we kind of discuss what you want, and then our next meeting is February 6th, and I actually should be able to be there. And in that meeting, how about if we kind of start off looking at the design that we have in hand, and just kind of going through it and settling on, yes, we need that, or look at something, yeah, we could probably get by without having that. But for the most part, like Shauna said and Chief said, the design that they have really meets the needs right now and into the future. But I'd like to be able to be there and kind of help guide us through that.
Okay.
And James, I don't mind contacting or working harder to find a date with Oak Grove. And certainly if the entire group is not able to go, if only 5 or 6 are able to go, we can get the Chief Childs over there, we can get something scheduled with him. Would that be fine in the meantime for me to work on? Hopefully I can report something back by that February meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for those that want to go, maybe shoot you an email, Josh, and that way you've got an idea of a head count. Because like Marlon was saying, for those that went to Sedalia, they may not really want to go to Oak Grove because they've seen what Sedalia has to offer and understands how it relates to what we're trying to do.
I'll work on that. I'll have some info by the next meeting on that.
I would say, throw it out to all of us, because I mean, I just said I don't need to, but if you have it scheduled, I can go, I'll go. Because,
Evening would work best for folks, or afternoon? Is that difficult for some of you work, I know, so might be challenging to go. So an evening would work for you. I'll work
You
on
just
this
say-
evening and see if we can, that way, because that was kind of a difficult time for the Sedalia to work.
Josh, I think that they have in their binder the list of all the different room spaces, what their original square footage calculation was for the 8 million number, and then how much we reduced it when we did the 20%. So you can see, like, for example, it has animal control that was 374 square feet. Now it's 0 square feet. I don't know. It says at the top, Odessa, it's one of the ones with the black bar at the top and then a black and white table. Odessa Police, Port, and EOC. Option 1, building space reduction. Should be in there.
It's got yellow highlighted areas.
And those highlighted areas are what we eliminated.
We removed.
So that might be good to take a look at before the next meeting, so you can consider what's been reduced, and that kind of categorizes the different programming already.
Like I said, I can't remember if it was meeting 1 or meeting 2. One of the reductions was the animal control. We know that's a service that still needs to be provided, but we felt that two additional things could be accomplished. We could get it out of the residential neighborhood, and we could do it for less money than building it inside this police facility. So it's not like we're eliminating the thing, but we think we can do it for less money.
I have a couple of questions I just want to, I'm going outside the box here a little bit. The 1912 building, that's scheduled to be sold.
Yes.
Next month.
Yes, it's, next month. So we've entered into the contract with them, the real estate contract. Everyone signed it, but in that contract, it had a closing date of, what was it?
It was September or October.
Yeah, maybe
I was
October.
at the Alderman meeting whenever.
Yes,
Adam
and
Trout
then
came and said,
But it's February now.
and now it's been moved back to February
Right.
10th. So 6 or beginning of February. So
That includes everything but that. The spot that
yes,
we're talking about.
from that where the
From the
football
top of the
field
hill.
kind of dips down,
Yeah,
everything from that raised ground over to the end of the block, including the park.
Yeah.
Will be the senior apartments.
And this is not a question that you want to hear about saying, what if that doesn't go through? I mean, I was at that meeting. I'm
Yeah.
just curious. I'm very anxious for the next Alderman meeting.
Yeah.
I want to see what they say.
Yeah, I
'Cause the
think we'd
question was
have to.
asked.
Yeah, I think we would have to go from there.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure legally, since we've entered into the
I know,
contract,
but I
I'm
mean,
not sure.
If you don't get your money, then they
Yeah,
don't get a piece of ground.
Yeah.
I don't know how that works.
yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We'd have to play that by ear just a
No,
little
I
bit,
know
but
that.
we,
I'm just
yeah,
that's something I'm curious about. I'm also curious, the new location for the park out south of town.
Mhm.
What kind of timetable is that on?
So we're not super engaged on the exact timetable, just because it's through Partners of the Park, which is
Right.
separate from the city.
That's what I thought.
But I do know that my original or last thing I had heard was that they intended to go forward with like the soccer fields and the baseball fields prior to the actual construction of the building. But I know that the mayor and I have both sat in on some engineering meetings with the Partners of the Park and their architect. So they're working on kind of what we did with the preliminary design, where they're trying to figure out, can we fit in, how many basketball courts can we fit into the
I
facility?
just want, they have moved some dirt out there at times, haven't they?
Yeah, they made the entrances that were coming off of 131.
Yeah,
And they put the
that's what they've
lake
been
in.
working on was get the lake done.
Yep, they put the lake in. And then there's soccer fields that will go on the south side of the property, and then in the middle was baseball.
Okay.
So I know they wanted to get those done as soon as possible because those will generate a revenue stream for them.
And the only reason I even asked that is because, I mean, I think nobody may agree with this at all, but I mean, if that happens at some point, it will happen at some point.
Mhm.
I mean, this location right here would be a spot that a police station could be put on, somewhere in what's now Dyer Park. Because the city owns it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to say I do, but
Yeah.
people always ask,
That's
Dyer Park? I usually
funny.
lie to them a couple times and say yes.
Is that area gonna be included in city limits,
Eventually, yeah, that would be the intent.
Yes, that's what they were talking
But
about.
we're looking
inside.
we're looking
south
a
side.
few more years down the road, at least
But
before.
the discussion was 10 years, Dyer Park might be a viable.
And that's kind of what I
city-owned property.
figured,
once they
but I just
expand
wanted
the
to
other
hear
part, but certainly the park board would have.
One more thing I'm gonna just say, because like I said, I was outside the box here for a little bit thinking about it. I know we're talking about how we cut this down. I'm just looking at this diagram. One thing, especially when you tell me, well, I don't think this is gonna be incorporated out there in the park, but one thing I hear people say often is when they go to other communities, we don't have a community center. We don't have a place for old, young, anybody to go walk when it's 0 degrees outside. And I didn't know if there was any way that on the east side or the west side of this structure, I'm thinking, instead of making it smaller, what if we made it bigger and we made it something that the community actually had an opportunity to come into and use outside of just a courtroom? I mean, that may not even be possible with the police station there, but I'm just saying, because I'm also looking at how we're gonna get people to vote for something.
Yeah.
And when they all of a sudden said, oh, that would be something that I would be there. I could use that. I could do something there.
I would add that the Partners for the Parks facility, the latest drawing that I had included like a walking track that would be like above the gym.
Okay.
So it
I
would
haven't
have
seen that,
something
so,
like
yeah, but
that.
That's the kind of thing that, I mean,
Yeah.
well, there's no doubt there's a need because they're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, they're considering that facility to be a civic center for the community.
But then we just said that's gonna 10 years down the road, probably.
I think they intend for it to be much sooner than 10 years.
Okay. And it may be, and it may not be.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, those are just the things I was thinking, I mean, because I think one thing if we can cut this down, but we still gotta sell it to,
Yeah.
the community has to say, yeah, I can get behind that. And I don't know, I just see,
Which is kind of what Grain Valley did, where they had already had a walking track of some sort, and then they built the police facility next to that existing walking track and park facility. But that was kind of a part of it was, the community can still use this, and now it's in a, safe, very safe environment. And
true. Yeah.
Did you have something, James?
No, I don't.
I actually do have a question, I just noticed. So in the women's locker room, there's only 2 lockers for women? Or there's not actually a women's locker room, there's just a men's locker room, and then it looks like just 2 lockers for women if there was 2 female officers?
So yeah, I wouldn't look at the number of lockers in that space. Obviously the square footage, the lockers that you see there, can be changed in size. Whoever went to Sedalia can recall, they had some, I think they're 24-inch wide lockers, right? And you can get those in 24, 20, 18, all the way down to 12-inch lockers if you want. I would recommend that. It's hard to hang your gear in a 12-inch locker. But depending on what square footage and programming is necessary, it's really to represent the men's, women's locker room facility, it actually adds cost to do a unisex facility and have, like, you guys have been in a travel center where you go and you get the shower, the bathroom, stall, all in one unit. And to do, say, 4 units actually costs more than a locker room style with 1 bathroom attached. So we tried to work with the designer on the least expensive method of providing that type of programming in a facility versus adding costs to the program, adding costs to the project in order to provide the program.
He's working.
But yes, the women, I guess you could take away from that, the women's locker room is smaller than the men's locker room.
So, I mean, I just remember Sedalia being like, they're running out of lockers, so. Yeah, I'm just curious, like,
Where do you expand?
yeah, like, how do you add more? I mean, the men's is like a whole area, but like, there's no, if you were to get more female officers. I was thinking, trying to think equitable here in the future, as we look into the future.
I will say the profession historically for generations has been a male profession, not that that's right, wrong, or indifferent. Would love to have, I have women that work on my staff, and I would love to have more great employees, wonderful police officers, do a great job for the community. But when you look at it historically, you know, they matched those historically.
You have to have the applicants before you get hired.
True, yeah.
So definitely next meeting, we need to have an idea of what we think needs to go in, right? I know that's what James talked about, is deciding what aspects.
Might be some good homework to look at with some thoughts to come in. It might, we don't have necessarily a guest. We might have Navigate in if we can get that scheduled. But really, it'll be an opportunity for you guys to have a lengthy discussion again. But if you have a little homework ahead of time and you have some thoughts that you would bring in you can certainly bounce questions off of me, you can bounce them off of each other. At some future date, if you want Mr. Estes to come back, I don't mind inviting him back, he will come and answer some of those questions for you. I will definitely get you, the whole group, a list of architects that, provided, I'm certain if it really came down to it, you wanted to hear from another architect that's not on the city's, vetted by the city, we could probably bring some in. They love selling their product, I'll be honest with you. They'll come talk to you all day, try to sell their product. But it's probably gonna be similar information that you've heard from Mr. Estes. Yes, sir.
So I just think we need to look at the possibility of a different design instead of what Mr. Estes had showed us with the stone walls and all that, looking at a different design and what the cost difference would be going with wood, steel, stucco. You can make a steel building look really nice. And I think we need to look at that side of it too, to see what the cost difference would be. So
Is less secure than this.
that's what the architects would have to figure in.
And certainly,
I wonder if Navigate can slightly speak to that.
so yes, and that might be a great opportunity for a group that we partner with called Navigate. They're the contract experts. They can probably talk about materials. This is, obviously architects love their product, and so does Mr. Estes. I mean, any architect that comes in can talk about their product. The ones that built Rain Valley's police department or designed their police department came in number 2 in our vetting process. We did not choose their firm, we chose Mr. Estes' firm. But you can see the finished product is a wonderful product. But I think Navigate might be able to shed some light for you on that topic. And we wouldn't want to take up your entire meeting schedule.
Unbiasedly.
I'm sorry.
They can provide an unbiased
Sure.
perspective.
And they definitely would provide that unbiased perspective. And you can bounce those questions off of him too, as far as materials. Yeah, that facility you see was proposed at concrete and steel. If you are looking at, moving more of that concrete and steel over to wood framing, stucco, it is going to bring that cost per square foot down. Still remaining the programming, but you're bringing that cost per square foot down. I want to say it was actually $375 a square foot, $399 a square foot for the storm shelter, if I remember the data correct. But, you can potentially bring that square footage, that $375 down to $299, just with material changes. So those are certainly costs. And then
We need to keep in mind the safety.
Yeah, understood.
Too.
I mean, it won't be like, if the storm shelter is something that you guys are interested in either postponing or, like Mr. Whitsitt has said, look for other funding mechanisms, I won't stop looking for those, but if that's not a part of this project, because that's the recommendation, okay, I'll continue to look for other mechanisms to do that. And those are certainly things that we would bring to Mr. Estes' attention. Certainly doing redesigns would cost money, not that that's something that your recommendation would, certainly recommend that we go back to redesign, to provide more schematics or drawings or updated design plans and numbers to the public, to you all and to the public and to the Board of Aldermen before decisions are made.
Okay. Anything else for the discussion, for the good of the group?
Anything else, James, for you?
Over the time between now and the next meeting, take a little bit of time and look at what's currently designed and think about, yeah, we need that, no, we don't need that. Also take a look around town and see if you see an alternative suggestion as well. This is the time to look at options and bring them to the table next meeting.
Where's the diesel shop? That's only $750,000.
Did you hear that, James? Susetha just, Mr. Howard mentioned the diesel repair shop as an option.
So I think that's a better public works building than it is a police station.
I don't know. He was from the public works. But it, I mean, that's certainly for discussions, certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your all's time. James, thanks for jumping on while you were working. I really appreciate that. Okay. Next meeting, let me grab my notes here. February 5th.
February 6th, Thursday the 6th.
Sixth, okay. It'll be here in this facility, 6 o'clock, and Navigate, we're gonna hope to get them booked back and make sure that that date will work for them. Again, it'll be a very quick, unless you have lots of questions, but I foresee it being, maybe the first 20, 30 minutes of your all's discussion, and then the rest of the time is what we did tonight, back and forth. I think that was helpful for us. And I did put a makeup date for Lafayette County Sheriff's Department tour, but instead I'm going to try to get the Oak Grove scheduled so that we can get that date out to everybody to make sure it works for you all. Again, it will probably be February schedule, more than likely maybe even into the very first part of March. But we'll definitely get something worked out with Chief Childs over there. We're certainly guests, so I want to make sure that he's receptive of bringing this. And again, keep that date, March 3rd through March 7th, if you're interested in participating in our firearms training simulator. We'll bring you in. It'll be, it can actually, get your heart rate up a little bit because we put you through some stressful situations. It's not like you run through the building, it's a screen that we use, kind of like a big video game, I'll put it that way. But you can see what my officers do to train during the winter time when we don't get out on the open range to fire our weapons. Shauna, anything else?
Nope.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. All your time is valuable. I really appreciate all your time. James, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.